You are listening to the free version of the Patreon Party People podcast, which means you're actually hearing last month's podcast. To hear this month's podcast, simply donate $1 or more at patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Not only do Patreon donors get a customized RSS feed to subscribe to this podcast through their favorite listening device, they also get lots of bonus extras like music archives, long-lost secret videos, and downloadable games. Just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog. And for those of you who don't want to do rolling monthly donations, there are even links to make one-time donations via Ko-fi and paypal.me. To learn about this or anything else I just mentioned, just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog. One last time, that's patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Hello and welcome to the Patreon Party People podcast for Sunday, November 18th, 2018. I am, of course, your host, Ryan Bloom, here by myself once again in the closet. Boy, this podcast is late, huh? I'd actually made, serious plans to do this much earlier. I think it was, November 1st that I really thought, I should do the podcast today. But the whole problem with that is that I was kind of, coming in towards the tail end of putting together the Sonic Mania Plus video review, and when stuff like that happens, I tend to get a little bit of tunnel vision where I don't want to do anything else except finish up the project I'm working on, otherwise it'll never get done, So it was this thing where it's I could do the podcast right now, I could surprise all my patrons by actually being on time for the first time in 6 months, or I could finish the video review. And then the video review ended up taking me another week and a half beyond that. Yesterday, Saturday, was actually the 1 week mark since the video review was finished and aired on TSSZ News. It is currently on bltn.net if you want to go watch it there. It's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/blazehedgehog, of course. But yeah, and the other whole other problem with doing this at the beginning of the month is that we're the kind of, I almost said household, it is an apartment, but we're the type of unit, I guess you'd say. We do all our shopping at the beginning of the month. So there's this very narrow window between, we'll say the first of the month and the third of the month, roughly, maybe closer to the fourth or the fifth, where it's waiting for the big week we go shopping. And when you've been on your feet out at Walmart or some other supermarket, we go to 3 or 4, we spread it out, like I said, over a week. So, spend 3 hours in a Walmart, you come home, you don't really want to do anything except relax. It's just on that cusp of being long enough on your feet where it's just man, I just want to relax for the rest of the night. I don't want to worry about podcasts and I don't want to worry about work. I just want to veg out in front of a television or a video game, or maybe even both, and just be a potato for the rest of the evening. And so, if I didn't get it done by that cutoff point, then there's the whole week of going grocery shopping. And then there's, babysitting my nephews. I've been doing that. Sometimes every week, sometimes every other week. It really depends. And that's about to get upgraded to 2 nights every week, Monday and Tuesday. So it'll be limiting my time even more. And, that window of when I can record the podcast is only going to get narrower. You'd think of only recording this once a month that it would be really easy to find time to do that. But with the weird schedules I keep and the responsibilities I have, it is not as easy as you would actually expect. Sometimes. I mean, obviously it still comes out once a month, but, the dates are slipping and slipping and slipping and slipping. And, maybe December will be our month where I pump the brakes or hit the gas or whatever weird vehicular metaphor I'm trying to think of, and we'll actually get back on track. And this month in particular with shopping, it was especially difficult because Thanksgiving is coming up. So we live on the second floor. So going grocery shopping, not only is it like 2, 3, 4 hours in a supermarket, but now I have to haul all our stuff up a flight of stairs. And when you're talking about, two 20-pound turkeys, because we usually buy one for Thanksgiving and then we have one just, frozen in our mini freezer. We have, one of those like standalone units. It's kind of like a chest. It's a chest freezer. That's what it's called. It's a chest freezer. We usually put like an extra turkey in there and we keep it until like January or April because, if you freeze something, it's not indefinite, like it does get freezer burn after a while and things like that, but it will keep a while. It'll keep well past its expiration date, let's say. So, Thanksgiving sales on turkeys. You buy 2 turkeys, you have one for Thanksgiving, and then you have one, Easter or New Year's or whatever. And that's just how we've always done it. Like, that's our routine. But now living on the second floor, carrying 40 pounds of poultry up the stairs is a serious task. Thankfully, I am up to the task. But yeah, if you didn't catch it, I mentioned it, the Sonic Mania video review is out. It's on bltn.net, it's on tsscnews.com, it's on YouTube. There's a little promo I put up on Twitter. It is everywhere. Well, not everywhere. I've been thinking, like, Facebook, do I want to get it like a Facebook and start posting my videos there? Not really. Like, especially now, like, it does seem like there is an exodus from Facebook lately. So, my videos aren't everywhere, but they are many places. They're even getting streamed on Twitch now, I guess, because I've been submitting all my video reviews to TSSZ for their Twitch channel. They do this. I think it's not even weekly. It's like bi-weekly. It's like multiple times a week. I really need to get clearer on our streaming schedule, but it is, they do regular Twitch streams on twitch.tv/TSSZ news. I think that's probably right. And they've been streaming my video reviews when I finish them. So, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitch. This is a very important very interesting segment of me just listing off URLs for all you out there. The video is a little over 20 minutes. I honestly did not expect the Sonic Mania Plus video review to be that long. Originally, when I said, I'll split the video reviews in 2. I'll do a Sonic Mania video review, and then I'll do a follow-up video for Plus. I figured the Plus video would be like 8 minutes tops. And here it is, over twice that length. Once you get me started talking about blue hedgehogs, I've said this before, you just can't get me to stop. I'll just go. I have a whole blog on Tumblr dedicated to that, where people just ask me endless questions about Sonic the Hedgehog, and I almost always seem to have an answer. Unless you're like really creepy or weird about it, then usually, I'll ignore that. I don't really get those very much, though, and even then, I will try and humor people. There was a time where a moderator for Giant Bomb's community, Zombie Pie, once a year, he'd send me a really weird question about Sonic the Hedgehog. And, I like that guy. He's all right. So I try and answer him in the best way I could possibly muster, even if it was a little bit weird sometimes. If you'd like to ask me weird questions about Sonic the Hedgehog, maybe I won't ignore them. Maybe you should go to blazehedgehog.tumblr.com/ask. Though I would hope all my Patreon supporters would already know this. You can ask me, whatever else you want to ask me. It doesn't necessarily have to be about Sonic the Hedgehog. In fact, I kind of like it when it's not about Sonic the Hedgehog. I can and I will ramble forever about Sonic the Hedgehog, but I will gladly answer anything else you think is worth asking me. I've been trying, if you can't tell, to push my Tumblr a little bit harder. Not for a lack of questions, but just because I think it's a neat thing that I've been doing for a while. I've been scheduling posts to go up on my Tumblr now for probably about 4 years, so that's a pretty regular update schedule if you think about it. 4 years of daily posts is something like 1,400, 1,500 posts in 4 years. That's not terrible. That's respectable. In fact, it's probably more than that, because there are days where more than one post goes up on my Tumblr blog. Tumblr has this queuing system where, I put posts into the queue, I specify times when to post, and if I have enough posts in the queue, it will actually post multiple in a day. So, usually that's been slim pickings lately because I'm really lazy at answering questions. So, it's been a pretty steady average of about one post a day for about a year and a half now, maybe less. Obviously, the whole move that I keep harping on, that's part of it. So, that's a lot of stuff. Now I guess it's just time, now that the video review is done, I'll just kick back and relax a little bit while I wait for the Sonic hacking contest to start up, because I'll have to cover that for TSSC. We're doing, Tristan said, I've said this like 2 or 3 months now, Tristan wants to support it exactly the same way we do with Sage, so that probably means I'm going to be reviewing a lot of like Sonic the Hedgehog hacks, things like that. Which, isn't really going to be like Sage, because Sage is, full-fledged fan games. You usually have like a level or two. It's usually kind of substantive. Is that a word? I feel like that's a word in my head. Substantive. Substantiary? I don't know. Words, man, but it's a lot of stuff. Usually, it's a sizable chunk of meat to bite into, let's say. And I feel like with the Sonic hacking contest, that's not always the case. Like a Sonic the Hedgehog hack can be like a single new gameplay feature for an existing game. It's not necessarily, a game into itself. It can be just a new feature, or it can be even like a piece of technology, like a level editor or something, is usually grounds, I think, for Sonic, almost can't even say it, Sonic hacking contest. There's a lot of like C words in there and C sounds that really trip me up. But yeah, it'll be a weird experience for me, probably, writing some of these reviews. And like I've said before, hopefully I'll get some help this time. Because, like I said, due to the smaller nature of certain projects on the Sonic hacking contest, usually that means there's usually, I guess I don't know. I was going to say usually there's a greater volume of them. But that's not necessarily true. You think about Sage this year, we had almost 90 games. I don't think there's going to be 90 entries into the Sonic hacking contest. So, I don't know. We'll see. That's still at least, I think, a week out yet, maybe 10 days, maybe less. So I have some time to not really think about that while I just recharge my creative batteries, let's say. And that has been kind of a weird process in a way. It hasn't been, surprisingly, it hasn't been easy to relax. I felt so exhausted towards the end of the Sonic Mania Plus video review. But what I ended up doing, to power through the end of that is, obviously, I didn't get my Halloween videos done like I said I wanted to do. I was hoping to have the video review done early enough that I could at least put out a video on Halloween night of me playing a horror game for my series Dare to Scare. That didn't exactly happen. So, Halloween came and I decided, okay, I'm just taking the night off. And then I ended up taking November 1st off, and I think a little bit of November 2nd. So, I had 3 good full days to just not really do anything, not really worry about the video review. And that actually gave me quite a bit of energy to push on through to the end of the video. It wasn't really a big deal. And, I said last month that I've been trying to improve my quality of life with editing these video reviews because I do work on them from home. And it's really hard to have a separate balance between when I work, when I relax. And specifically, I lean more on the side of working too hard. I'll just kind of roll out of bed and work until I sleep, basically. And that's not very healthy, and that's leading to me, feeling pretty burned out lately. So, the schedule I've been trying to do is that I've been trying to force myself to think that it's okay in the evening, after I've done some work, to actually, close all my editing programs and sort of relax for a little while. Spend the evening just chilling out in front of YouTube and not really worrying about editing the video forever. And what usually this leads to is I've also been trying to take just, full days off, as people tend to do when they have real jobs. And I guess the problem there is that when I take days off, it is more like a day off. I'll usually take Sunday off and that's it. So I work 6 days a week and that's not enough apparently. So taking a proper weekend off was actually really restful and recuperative, and it made it a lot easier to finish up the last few minutes of that video review. And I figured, okay, video review's done. I'm in the clear. I can just relax for the rest of November and probably most of December while the holidays go on and I'm being dragged around to various in-laws and aunts and cousins and dinners and babysitting and all this other stuff. I figured, that'll be fine. And then the day after I finish the video review, I'm kind of sitting here, metaphorically twiddling my thumbs thinking, oh man, I want to work on something so bad. I wanted to open Click Team Fusion and work on a video game project or write a script or just anything. I felt like I needed to be creative, and I had to force myself to bottle it up so that I could just force myself to relax and refill the creative tanks, so to speak. Because they felt bone dry for a minute there. And then I finished the video review and it's like, okay, let's keep going. What else can I do? What else can I do? And that is just really weird to me. It has been a struggle to actually force myself to turn off from work and just enjoy the time I'm giving myself to relax. The vacation, as it were, the holiday, you could say it is. But even still, the day I wrote these podcast notes, I almost started that morning by writing the video review script for my Sonic Forces video. And that's not even necessarily a video review. I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that. It has been over a year since Sonic Forces came out, so I can't really do a video review. And even if I did a video review, I feel like I'd be repeating a lot of the same things that I've said in the past about certain things. So I want to kind of tackle it from a different angle. And that was obviously on my mind that morning. I thought, okay, I'm going to write this video review. And I had to force myself to say, no, you're not going to write this video review. If nothing else, you need to write the podcast notes. And that's what I ended up doing. But I feel like that's also just part of my creative process in a way. I've kind of gone through this all my life. It's after some point, if my brain keeps screaming out to be creative, I kind of have to respond just to get it to shut up, which is a weird thing to say, but that's how I used to frame it back in the day. I remember when I was writing that one article, the very first article I guess I got quote unquote famous for, Dissecting a Hedgehog, an in-depth analysis of Sonic the Hedgehog. I wrote that back in 2005 for the Gamer's Quarter. It was a quarterly zine about video games. I don't even think it's online anymore. It was this 10-page dissertation on what I thought about Sonic the Hedgehog game mechanics. And I was posting work-in-progress versions of that to the insert credit forums back in the day. And I think I ended up framing it in a post there as something my inner monologue won't shut up, and eventually it repeats ideas enough that I have to write them down or go crazy. That is a super weird thing to say, but that's also kind of the truth. An idea will get stuck in my brain, and unless I pull it out of my brain, it will just play on loop forever and ever and ever and ever and ever until it either drives me crazy or I pull it out. So, things are probably going to happen on the Sonic Forces video front sooner rather than later. I don't think I'm going to be able to take the whole of November and December off. I think there is going to eventually come a boiling point for this at some point where I just either go crazy or I start working again. One thing I wanted to try doing before actually getting back to more real work is stream more on Twitch, I guess. I have been streaming more on Twitch lately anyway. Usually when like my cousin or my friends will ask me to play like PUBG, it's really easy to just, hit the NVIDIA Shadow Play hotkey and just start streaming instantly. So I've been doing that a lot more. But I want to actually do like a quote unquote serious stream of like just something. One of the ideas I've been tossing around to do after the video review was finished was to do like a solid week of streaming, like stream every night for like 7 days in a row. And that's not like, oh, excuse me. That's not just, obviously that's something I want to try doing just in general, just to see, how that feels, how my audience responds to that. But also there's this like thing called becoming a Twitch partner, right? Where, if you stream enough, you get like partner status and you can run ads on your videos. You can start making money from Twitch streams, things like that. And Twitch actually makes it like really easy to see how close you are to becoming a Twitch partner. They actually give you like this checklist of items of things you can do to achieve partner status and get the ability to run ads and things like that. And usually when I run like a formal stream of like, let's say Sonic Mania or Sonic Forces or Parappa the Rapper or, whatever else, the things I've streamed over the last 2 or 3 or 4 months, well, I guess it's been longer than that for some of those, but whatever. Usually I'll hit like every single checkbox except for one. And the one checkbox I miss is to stream every day for 7 days. So not only do I want to just try it for myself, because I think that would be fun to like play and finish a whole game across a Twitch stream, but also, it would let me achieve Twitch partner status and I could run ads and people could subscribe to me and give me bits, and it would be another revenue stream for me to monetize the content that I do. And who knows, maybe it would even lead to like me streaming my own video reviews on my own Twitch channel at some point, not just on TSSZ News, on the TSSZ Twitch channel. So who knows, that's definitely something to look forward to in the future. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know what game it's going to happen with. I was thinking maybe Undertale. I haven't played Undertale yet, and I really should get on that. I just bought Sunset Overdrive on Steam. I'm already about 2 hours into that game, but I wouldn't be remiss to restart it from the beginning to stream the whole thing on Twitch. There's also the Sonic Unleashed anniversary coming up this month, probably in just like 2 or 3 days. I think the 10th anniversary of that game is on like November 22nd, and it's the 18th. So, 2-3 days from now, I could stream some of that and talk over it. But that's sometime in the future. We'll get there when we get there. I don't really want to start with Sonic Unleashed on the 22nd, because then that'll run into Thanksgiving and I'll have to actually like balance going to a Thanksgiving dinner with streaming on Twitch that night. And that doesn't really sound like a fun thing for me to do, though. Again, like if I'm going to be babysitting 2 nights every month, I'm probably going to have to get used to that. If I'm really going to achieve my goal of streaming every day for 7 days straight. But whatever, we'll get there when we get there. I'll pick a game. I'll probably like run a poll and see what games people want me to stream. You can always just leave a comment here if you have a game that you want me to stream. Like maybe if it gets to be like a cool enough thing, like enough people tune in, maybe that'll even become like a Patreon reward where patrons can suggest games that they want me to stream. That would be an interesting thing. I've been thinking about revamping the Patreon page a little bit to rework my Patreon subscription goals, because those feel like they maybe are stagnating a little bit for some of them that aren't really getting met or anything like that, So, but again, we'll get there when we get there. Stream week is coming sometime eventually. I am who I am. That's all that I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. No, I'm not Popeye, but you know what I mean. Speaking of stream archives and streaming and Twitch and stuff like that, I am running an archive. Wait, what? Hang on, I need to reread my notes here. I don't think I wrote this sentence properly. I am running an archive on a long overdue stream archive? What? That is not English. I don't know what I wrote there, what I was trying to write, But speaking of stream archives, I have a stream archive, a very old but semi-important stream archive. I think I mentioned this in August when I first really put this all together. The Sonic 06 Endurance Race for Charity stream archive. Now that we're past the Sonic Mania Plus video review, it's time for me to start thinking about what I'm going to do with that stream archive. It's all cut up into 18 different chunks. Each chunk is about an hour long, and I need to figure out when that all gets posted. So to help me figure out when all that gets posted, I am running a survey on SurveyMonkey. You can find a link on the Patreon, patreon.com/BlazeHedgehog. There's a post about it with a link. I think that link might be only for patrons only. I probably need to unprivate that at some point so that the general public can see it. And there's also, but if you don't want to go to my Patreon, just go to the Sonic Mania Plus video review on YouTube. The pinned comment on the top of that should be a link to that survey. The survey asks, how do you want it to be posted? How do you feel about my stream archives in general? It's about 6 questions long. I actually wrote here in my notes that I should actually read the results live on the podcast. So this is actually going to take me a little bit to set up. For you, it'll probably sound instantaneous, but it's going to take me a minute to find this on my tablet. So, okay, it actually took me a little bit longer to sort these out than I thought it would, because I thought I could just log in and bring them up on my tablet, but I'd have to remember my login credentials and everything like that. So when I clicked on the link on my YouTube video, it just launched the survey like I was taking the survey. So I actually had to go out and type up all the results and everything else. And it took me a really long time. And since I don't have a chair at my computer right now because it's in here in the closet, I had to kneel down on my legs and So if I sound a little bit out of breath, it's the difficulty of squeezing in here into this tiny little closet space. It's sitting on my knees for 15 minutes while I typed out these results. My legs are kind of asleep right now. But here are the survey results as of today. The video review has been up for about a week, so this is about a week of results. It's about 43 people who took this survey so far. Again, it's on SurveyMonkey. You can find it on the Sonic Mania Plus video review. It's the first pinned comment, or you can find it on my Patreon page. I will be unprivating that post as soon as I remember it, which honestly means I'll probably forget. But, okay, question number 1. Did you know I have a Stream Archives playlist? 60% as of right now say no, they did not know I had a Stream Archives playlist. And obviously 40% said yes. That honestly doesn't surprise me that people don't know I have a Stream Archives playlist. YouTube is really bad at surfacing this kind of stuff sometimes. It's not something I really publicize a lot. It's on my front page. If you go to youtube.com/BlazeHedgehog, it's there on that first screen there. If you scroll down a little bit, it'll come up, the Stream Archives playlist. But obviously no one ever spends a lot of time on that page. Nobody ever really clicks on the playlist section. So it's this kind of weird buried thing. And it's not that most people don't know I have a Stream Archives playlist. This is close to being a 50-50 split. It's 60-40. So, it's not that bad, but I wish it would be better. But at the same time, we're going to get into these other questions here, and it's going to be pretty obvious. People don't come to my channel for Stream Archives, let's say. Question 2. Have you ever used the Stream Archives playlist? 67% said no. 16% have used it, and another 16% have at least looked at it once. So you can tell already, even though it was a 60-40 split of knowing I have a Stream Archives playlist, the vast majority of people have never used it, have never even looked at it. Which, honestly, is fine to me, because, that's the entire reason I do my Stream Archives in this kind of weird way, because, it's disposable content in a way. It's for people who really, really like the sound of my voice or whatever, and want to just see hours and hours and hours of raw, unedited gameplay footage that isn't necessarily recorded super nice, that isn't like production quality stuff. It's just, quick and dirty, basically almost like a Let's Play, really. Like, it's just super disposable stuff that only really is good in the moment, let's say. But, I do have people out there who watch that stuff. 16% have used it and another 16% have seen it. That's 32% of my audience has at least seen it, if that makes sense. Unless, well, I guess the survey results could be taken that the same 16% that have seen it have also used it. So that's not necessarily 32%. I guess that's kind of a difficult metric because of the way I set up the survey. That's not a multiple choice answer. I mean, I could have said pick 2 or something. I don't know. There's probably like a setting within SurveyMonkey where I could, no, that wouldn't work anyway. I guess I asked that question poorly. Question number 3. I usually keep my stream archives marked as unlisted, but still accessible through the Stream Archives playlist. This keeps my channel relatively clutter-free while keeping the videos viewable, if you know where to find them. How do you feel about that? 67%, probably the same 67% that haven't even looked at the Stream Archives playlist, said they like this. 23% said they don't care, and 9% said they don't like it. So, thankfully, the minority of people don't like it. Like, obviously, I like the way it is. I'm going to keep doing it that way. And thankfully, most people seem to like it that way. So, that's not bad. The 23% of you that don't care, thank you for not caring. I don't know. Question number 4. Would you prefer it if all of my Stream Archive videos were always public all the time? 53% of you said don't care. And then 23% said yes, and 23% said no. Honestly, if you don't care, then I'm not going to change the way I'm doing things. That's about as simple as that gets. Like, even though 23% said yes, the don't care is way higher on the scale. So I'll just keep on keeping on the way things are going. Obviously, this survey, I think it just runs indefinitely. It will probably run until I start posting the Sonic 06 endurance race for charity Stream Archives, in general. So, you still have time to vote. I don't know when I'm going to start posting these videos, to be perfectly honest with you. It might be sometime later this month. It might be sometime in December. We'll find out. We'll get there when we get there. Question number 5. The Sonic 06 Endurance Race Archive is 18 videos, each one an hour long. How would you like this to be presented? And again, here's that number again. 67% said the current way, where the first video is public to let you know that the Stream Archive exists, and then the rest of the videos are private, or not private, but unlisted, so that you have to go into the Stream Archives playlist to view them. And obviously, it will get its own dedicated playlist at some point as well. So that was 67% said they liked it that way. People who want all 18 videos public and posted on a schedule, that was 18%. And then 13% said they want all the videos to be hidden. They don't want to see the Stream Archive at all. So again, keep on keeping on the way things are going. Don't change the way I'm posting. Stream Archives, I'm doing it just fine. They are not the main draw to my channel, but it's nice that they're there for people who want them. Good enough. That's exactly why the setup is the way it is. And then the final 6th question is, if you'd like to see these videos on a schedule, how often should each video be posted? And obviously this isn't going to be happening because I'm going to be doing it probably first video is public and the rest are hidden. But 34% said they don't want a schedule, which I presume to mean that they just want all 18 videos up at once, which, if they're hidden, that's kind of why I put this option in here, is that, like, if the videos are all hidden, then they'll just all go up at the same time. There won't be a schedule. And then 23% said every Sunday, 23% said Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which is a schedule I'm kind of partial to. That's like the old webcomic format that still lives on to this day. And then 18% said daily. So obviously, daily videos are not really something anyone's looking for from me, for at least for not this kind of content. And I tend to agree. I think daily videos are way, way too much. I don't know how other channels pull it off, frankly. If you think of like a TV show, right? A TV show that airs on television, it is once a week. Which is why I put it in there to say, like, every Sunday. And, I have this weird image in my head of like Sonic Sunday, right? Where every Sunday a new stream archive from the Sonic 06 Endurance Race for Charity goes up or whatever. But, and like, not to like digress a little bit here. I know I tend to digress a lot on this podcast. But literally before I sat down to record this session, I saw like a statistic on Twitter. Like, it wasn't really cited or, sourced or anything like that. That said, like, studies are starting to prove that like the Netflix binge watching model, people tend to enjoy shows less when they see them that way. People actually get more enjoyment out of a television show if it's like properly serialized to air, once a week or, whatever. So, the idea of doing like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or even every Sunday for a serialized series has a lot more appeal to me than, say, daily videos like Markiplier or Game Grumps or whatever else do. But yeah, that's the survey that's going on currently. Like I said, I don't know when the cutoff date is going to be for when this survey closes. It'll just probably run forever until videos start showing up, and then I'll just ignore new answers. Maybe I'll go in and delete the comment from my YouTube video. But you can go take this survey if you want. Again, go find my Sonic Mania Plus video review on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/blazehedgehog. It should be the first pinned comment on there. It was a little hard to find the comment on the YouTube app, but if you're doing it on the website, it should be real easy. If you're doing it on the app, on like an Android app or whatever, it's on like the rightmost sidebar where it shows related videos. Just scroll all the way down to the bottom and it'll eventually get to comments, and it'll let you see my pinned comment and leave a comment on the video. You can also go to patreon.com/blazehedgehog. There's a post there with a link to the survey. Like I said earlier, I need to go in and unprivate that post and make sure it's not just for patrons anymore, because, the deadline has kind of passed where I gave my Patreon patrons early access to this survey. But yeah, go take the survey, go tell me what you think of my stream archives, though it is a pretty clear picture to me at this point. But who knows, maybe you disagree, maybe you think something else, and you're enough people that you can swing the tide of responses or whatever. But go do that. For me, I'm gonna take a quick break real quick, real fast. You can tell I need it. I'm mixing up how I'm reading my notes and have indigestion from the pizza I had right before recording. So I'm going to go take care of that. I'm going to go rest my voice, get something to drink, and I'll see you guys after the break. We're back. I got something to drink. I played a little bit of Aladdin on the Game Boy Advance, which, for the record, is Capcom's port of the Super Nintendo version. It seemed like I had a file that was about halfway through the game, and it's not an especially long game, so I just kind of finished it off. It took about like 15 minutes. We're gonna get into a different sort of segment here. Usually after the break, is usually when I talk about like media I've been consuming, like movies I've been watching, or mostly just video games I've been playing. But way back when this podcast first started, I was doing this thing where I would sometimes talk about like news stories that interested me, like a real podcast would do. And at some point I kind of stopped doing that because I was rambling for way too long on this podcast already. But some of you seem to imply that you don't mind longer podcasts. So, I'm going to bring that segment back. There's no guarantee that it's going to be like a lasting segment or that it's going to appear in every single podcast. It just means that this one time there are some things I can talk about that haven't really come up on my Tumblr blog as of yet. So I'm going to talk about them here. They're kind of things I've tweeted a little bit, but kind of not, but whatever. These are things I want to talk about, and this is my podcast. So we got the formalities out of the way. Now it's time to just talk about whatever. Anyway, first thing I wanted to talk about of two items is the PlayStation Classic got its final list of announced games over October. They are, for the most part, pretty embarrassing. I feel like Nintendo was really, really good at picking like timeless classic games, right? Like Final Fantasy VI, Super Mario Brothers, some Mega Man games, Contra, Castlevania, stuff like that. The real like things that people define the console for that still hold up to this day that are all-time classic games, right? And Sony, on the other hand, seemed to just pick out whatever was cheapest and easiest and sort of like franchises that are still relevant in the modern context, but maybe had like rocky beginnings all the way back in, 1996 when a lot of these games came out. Which isn't to say that there's like all the games on the PlayStation Classic are bad or anything like that, but I guess I'll just read out the full list here. There's Battle Arena, Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, Grand Theft Auto, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil Director's Cut, that's the first Resident Evil, Revelations Persona, Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, not Metal Gear Solid, I already said that. Did I? I thought Metal Gear Solid, yeah, Metal Gear Solid is towards the top of this list. Anyway, Twisted Metal and then Wild Arms. So that's your 20 games for the PlayStation Classic. And it's like, okay, why do we need Toshinden when we have Tekken 3? Nobody's going to play Battle Arena Toshinden for more than 5 minutes, and only to laugh at how old it is. Like, I have the Sega Saturn version of Battle Arena Toshinden, which for all intents and purposes is actually, I think it's better than the PlayStation version. I think it comes with, a more robust story mode, and maybe even, enhanced graphics, because the original Battle Arena Toshinden was, a launch title for the PlayStation just about. It is really old, and the Sega Saturn port came a year later or something and had all this bonus content. So as someone who owns Battle Arena Toshinden, it's called Ura Toshinden on the Saturn because Ura means like special edition or something like that. But as someone who owns this game, I can tell you that it is garbage, it is not worth playing, and it is so dated that it's only worth laughing at. The same can be said for Cool Borders 2, for example. If you look up gameplay footage of Cool Borders 2 right now, it's not a very good game. It's definitely not as good as, say, a Tony Hawk game or 1080 snowboarding or anything else that you'd want to play, like an extreme sports game from this era. And then there's, the big stinker in the room, which is Rainbow Six, which, if you look up gameplay footage of this, actually looks worse than a lot of Unity asset flips that are being sold for 99 cents on Steam these days. And then there's, Destruction Derby. It always weirded me out back in the day that Destruction Derby was, this big tentpole for the PlayStation. There were 2 or 3 of those Destruction Derby games, and while they were sort of fun at the time, I don't think they've aged particularly well. They weren't ever, an A-class game, let's say. They were always sort of just, it's oh, look, there's rudimentary vehicle destruction, and that was kind of their gimmick. That was it. There's about 4 people on planet Earth that remember why Destruction Derby was relevant, and I'm one of those 4. And then, of course, they got Twisted Metal 1 instead of, like, the one people obviously want, which is Twisted Metal 2. It is, like, probably one of the most baffling things on this list that they got Twisted Metal 1 and not Twisted Metal 2. And then, of course, there's Metal Gear Solid, which is a game notable for having, like, DualShock vibration gimmicks, even though the PlayStation Classic doesn't support vibration. And it's like, okay, a lot of games on this list were DualShock games. Ridge Racer 4 could be a DualShock game, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3. But like Metal Gear Solid uses vibration in like a particularly unique way during the Psycho Mantis fight. So taking it out, making you play it on like a normal, regular, classic PlayStation controller when I don't think, like, nobody I knew kept their classic PlayStation controllers if they could help it. The DualShock was such, like, an amazing upgrade that basically everyone had one. Like, you needed one. Not just for, like, a game like Ape Escape, but just because it was a better controller overall. So many games benefited from analog control that the DualShock became the standard PlayStation controller from now until forever. And Sony didn't include it with the PlayStation Classic, and they're including games that benefit from having a DualShock, and it is baffling. And then, of course, you think about Persona, which I've never played. I've never played any of the Persona games. I watched the Giant Bomb Endurance run for Persona 5, but I've never actually played a Persona game for myself, especially not any of the PlayStation ones, but talking with my friends who do have very deep knowledge of this series, apparently Persona 1 on the PlayStation is a pile of garbage. It has like real serious localization problems. Like half the game is missing for like content reasons because, obviously Persona is a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series, which are very religiously focused RPGs, let's say, where you're like making pacts with demons and fighting either for or against the devil and things like that. Some of them are straight up called like Devil's Survivor, right? So giving you like the original PlayStation 1 localization of Persona 1 is like kind of a disaster in its own way. And it is such a weird, mostly bad list. Like, it's great that they got something like Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. Like, that's probably my favorite puzzle game of all time. So, seeing that represented is A+ to me, but I don't want Persona. I don't want Toshinden. I don't want Cool Borders. I don't want Destruction Derby. I don't want Rayman 1. Rayman 1 is like a fine game, but it's actually like, it's weird and dated in ways that don't really mean that it should be dug up anymore. It's also like super hard too. I have the PlayStation version of Rayman 1, and about the time you leave like that first world, like the Fairy Glade or whatever, and you get into the later levels, like the difficulty spikes out of nowhere, like big time, big time. I've never beaten it, and I've never gotten past the second world, because I remember, I haven't played it in probably like 15 years, but I remember it getting very hard very quickly, and kind of like controlling weird, and the sprites are weird. It's kind of a beautiful game in some ways, but it's also very, this is going to sound derogatory, but it's very French. Which, Ubisoft and, I'm blanking on the guy's name. I knew Michel Ancel. It's a very Michel Ancel game, which, it's a very early Michel Ancel game is what I'm trying to say, because I think, he does great art stuff. Rayman 2 is probably one of my top 10 platformers of all time, but Rayman 1 isn't really a game that I would jump for joy for having. It really feels like Sony built this list out of like not only stuff that was cheap or easy to get, but kind of like current brand names, if that makes any sense. Like things Sony thought modern gamers would recognize. Like, the only reason the Rainbow Six game is on there is because Ubisoft is still making Tom Clancy games. And it's like, well, where are all the other classic games? And I could kind of buy that, like, some of the definitive PlayStation classic games are missing because a lot of them got remade recently. A lot of them are on, like, recent collections. Like, there's no Mega Man X4 or Mega Man 8 because Capcom just put those out on the PlayStation 4. There's no Castlevania Symphony of the Night because Castlevania Requiem just came out on the PlayStation 4. Activision probably doesn't want Crash or Spyro to turn up on the PlayStation Classic because those just got really nice HD remasters. But at the same time, that sounds kind of like a bogus reason to me, right? Because when you think back to, like, the NES Classic, right? That came out, what is it, almost 2 years ago at this point. It was like right before Mega Man Legacy Collection came out. And even though Mega Man Legacy Collection contained all of the NES Mega Man games, like a couple of them still ended up turning up on the NES Classic, I think. I think like Mega Man 2, maybe Mega Man 3 were on the NES Classic. So, you know, it's one of those things where you imagine if Sony really cared about this thing, they probably would have gotten the games they wanted to get, right? They could have gotten Castlevania Symphony of the Night because the PlayStation version is appreciably different from the version that came out on the PS4. The PS4 version is actually based on the PSP version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which changes the script and changes the voice acting. So there are people out there that are very interested in getting the original PlayStation version of Symphony of the Night. And what better way to sell those people a original version of Symphony of the Night than to put it on the PlayStation Classic? But they didn't do that. Instead, they gave us Rainbow Six, which is probably the most dated first-person shooter you could put on this thing. And like, I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that Sony doesn't care about this thing. It was barely even a year ago that a Sony PlayStation brand executive was out there at like a Gran Turismo event or something, and some magazine, I don't know if it was like the Wall Street Journal or if it was even a gaming magazine, asked him, you know, will we ever see old Gran Turismo games turn up again? Like, will they ever get re-released on the PSN? What is the status of PS1 games on the PS4 at all? And his response was basically that nobody really wants to play old games anymore, that nobody cares, nobody really likes them, that they're too old to enjoy anymore. And then you have, 9, 10, 11 months later, Sony announces the PlayStation Classic. And it's like, wait a minute, are you recanting on that statement? Or do you not care about the PlayStation Classic? And is it just like a cheap cash grab? And, well, now that we have the full list of 20 games, I think it's pretty obviously just a cash grab. They're here to cash in on the fad that Nintendo started, and, you know, they don't care one way or the other which games get put on there or not. They're not going to bend over backwards for licensing. They're not going to pressure publishers too much to give them the games that people would really want to play. They'll just, you know, take the easy, cheap, fast way to put the system out. Which, in a way, like, you know, kind of confirms what that guy was saying, the PlayStation brand executive. I don't remember his name right now, but his whole thing about how people don't want to play old games. So, you know, they're going to give us games that nobody wants to play. They're going to give us Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Rainbow Six, things that were only fun in 1996 and haven't been fun in probably 15, 20 years at this point. If they would have made like a PlayStation Classic with, I don't know, games like Tomba or Klonoa or Parappa the Rapper, Crash Team Racing, Ape Escape, Einhander, you know, there's a long list of games they could have put on this thing. Final Fantasy Tactics, obviously like a Tony Hawk game or two, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, like, again, like with the PlayStation version of Symphony of the Night, there are a lot of people that would probably like to own the original PlayStation versions of Crash and Spyro. There was, you know, a minor outcry when the HD version of Crash Bandicoot came out that there was no way to play the original classic games. So again, much like with Symphony, what better way to sell people classic versions of these games that they want than to put them on the PlayStation Classic? right? Like, that makes total sense to me. And I'm not saying that they should put, 6 platformers on this thing. They could put, like, Crash Bandicoot 2 and Spyro the Dragon 1 on there. And at the very least, I would be happy. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would be happy with that. But I just feel like this thing is destined to prove the point that nobody wants to play old games because Sony is giving people old games that they don't want to play anymore. So, there's that. Red Dead Redemption 2 just came out. Well, at this point, it came out like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. And it was one of those games where, like, I was really excited for it at first, and then I ended up reading some reviews, and I ended up watching the Easy Allies video review for that. And it kind of, like, killed all my excitement for that game. Not because the reviews were negative, like a lot of the reviews I saw were, like, typical bend over backwards, oh my gosh, Rockstar's the best game developer ever, glowing reviews. But it was the way that people were talking about that game that kind of turned me off. It's one of those things where I kind of read between the lines a little bit, and it's kind of scaring me off from the game a little bit. The main thing that worries me so much is how many reviews talk about how, like, slow the game is. Like how you have to take time to care for your horse, you have to take time to manually clean your weapons, your movement speed is super slow, things like that. And it kind of gives me flashbacks to the way people were talking about Grand Theft Auto in 2008. When Grand Theft Auto 4 first came out, I think everyone, myself included, was like super in love with that game, right? It was the first GTA of a new generation. It had all this, like crazy advanced physics technology. It was striving for a new paradigm in, I don't know, relationship simulation and physics systems and all this, like, really, it seemed at the time like really complicated stuff, really deep stuff, where, you're building friendships and you've got, like, all these crazy, like, ragdoll physics, this physics system called Euphoria, where, you can stumble around drunk realistically, you can flail around when cars hit you realistically. It's this super real animation system in a sense. And, just at the time, it was bleeding edge stuff, and we just kind of forgave it for being so bleeding edge at the time. And then, 5 years later, let's say, so that game came out in 2008. It was the night before Grand Theft Auto 5 was going to come out, which came out in 2013. Can you believe it? That was 2013. That was 5 years ago. That's crazy to me when I looked that up and wrote that down. But on the night before Grand Theft Auto 5 was going to come out, I went back and I started a brand new game in GTA 4. I figured, I'll refresh my memory to see what the old game played like so that I have perspective on what's different in Grand Theft Auto 5. And as it turns out, all of GTA 4's super complex, revolutionary, bleeding edge technology was kind of terrible. That game very quickly aged to dirt. All the controls were just like super mushy and slow, and the vehicles handled like greasy bowling balls. The relationship systems were just like, you were constantly getting nagged to go hang out with your cousin or your friends to do like these really crummy mini games that weren't very fun. And at least like once a day you'd get a phone call, Roman, hey cousin, you want to go to a titty bar? And it's like, no, Roman, I don't. That is the last thing I want to do with you in this video game. And like even the humor was terrible. It was all this super dated, like post 9/11 George Bush era political gags that just didn't land anymore. And like the humor clashed with the moments where the games was trying to be serious. It was just like a disaster, basically. I don't want to use the word disaster, but that's what it was. Grand Theft Auto 4 was a bad game. It was bad, and it was sluggish, and it was messy. So much of it exists just for the sake of having it in a video game. Not because it was fun, but because someone said, wouldn't it be cool if we simulated this? What if when you took a taxi, you could go into a first-person camera and sit in the passenger seat and just watch the driver drive? Wouldn't that be cool? No, not really. it was all like so super impressive in 2008, but in 2013 it just felt like trash. It was bad. Even like I'd even say like the old PS2 Grand Theft Auto games have probably aged better than Grand Theft Auto 4. So when I hear people talk about Red Dead Redemption 2, I hear a lot of the same Grand Theft Auto 4 stuff. It's the same tone of voice people are speaking. Like, oh, you get to manage your own gang of cowboys. You get to take these really long baths where you just watch your dude scrub himself. You have to spend all this time brushing your horse by hand. You can go see a vaudeville show, a full live vaudeville show where you're sitting in the crowd and it just takes like 20 minutes of these idiots up on a stage doing Old West comedy routines. Everything is so slow. But it's slow on purpose, you know? Isn't that great? It's just like the Old West. It's realistic. That's fun. It's like, is it though? Is it really that fun, or are you just like super starstruck to be playing through a new Rockstar game? In 5-10 years, what are you gonna think of this game? And man, I don't know. And like, obviously things are different. You know, there's not going to be like that dated political humor. I mean, I don't think so. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't know. Red Dead 2. And like, there are people out there on the internet that feel like they're catching on to this too. I was just reading tweets earlier tonight from a friend of mine talking about how, you know, he was trying to enjoy Red Dead Redemption 2, and it felt like the game was fighting against him for that. Like, it was doing all this weird stuff that was just like a little too obtuse, a little too slow, a little too adversarial. And, you know, that just feeds into my fear that this game is just another Grand Theft Auto 4, that in, you know, years from now, people are going to look back at Red Dead 2 and they're going to be like, what were we thinking, you know? So I don't think I'm super excited to play Red Dead 2 at any time, at any point in the future. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe people will remember this as an all-time classic. But right now, I just don't care. And we're going to go take another quick break here because I just ran out of water. And all this talking, you probably can hear like my gross, weird mouth sounds. My mouth's getting kind of dry, so I'll be back in a few seconds, where we'll talk about what video games I've been playing and we'll wrap up this podcast. So, see you then. And we're back. Instead of refilling with water like I said I was going to, I ended up refilling my water bottle here with a little bit of generic off-brand cola soda. I almost said Coda Sola. Yes. Hopefully you don't really hear the bottle fizzing, because it is fizzing quite loudly to my ears here on top of my little sound dampening box. Here, I'll hold it a little bit closer to the microphone. Maybe you can hear that. I don't know. Hopefully it's not being picked up on the microphone otherwise, because, you know, I might have a lot of work ahead of me as far as editing this last third of the podcast. But now's the time where I talk about video games I've been playing, movies I've been watching, things like that. You know, the typical closeout segment we do here on the podcast, and by we, I mean me. Top of the list of about 3 games I've played since the last podcast is Klonoa on the Wii. I mentioned this back a little bit. For the PlayStation Classic segment, the PlayStation version of Klonoa is a definite classic. But for some reason, something just struck me about wanting to go back and play the Wii version. It's a nice short game, you know, probably, I don't know, we'll say 4 to 6 hours. The kind of game where you could probably play most of it in a single sitting. I think usually of the 16 or 17 levels the game contains, I usually quit right around like World 5 of 7. So, it's not an especially long game. It's not an especially difficult game, especially the Wii version, which gives you like a bigger health bar and stuff like that. You don't usually die very much in the Wii version of Klonoa. And, those of you who know me, who've known me beyond the limits of this podcast, have known like super old video reviews I've done for like Klonoa 1 or 2. I think that was like one of the first or second video reviews I ever did, was a combination video review for Klonoa 1 and 2. I'm pretty picky about this franchise. Namco, geez, I cannot talk all of a sudden. It's getting pretty late at night here, folks. That's probably contributing to the weird flubs I'm finding myself in all of a sudden. But Namco never really seemed very satisfied with Klonoa's success. Namco being the developer of the Klonoa franchise. The original very first Klonoa game had kind of like this cute, sort of simple storyline that towards the end actually got like legitimately tragic in a lot of different ways. I won't spoil it here if you've never seen the endings. Or not, like, I say endings, but I mean, like, the whole back half of that game goes some very weird, sort of, not really dark, but kind of sad places that you wouldn't really expect a game like this to go. It kind of reminds me of Kirby in a lot of ways, except usually Kirby games kind of end on, like, this weird sort of cosmic horror element, and Klonoa is more about sort of, like, just being depressing in a way, that kind of catches you off guard the first time you go through the game. And, just saying that, you're probably going to be guarded if you've never seen the back half of a Klonoa game. But just know that it was one of those things where you play it in the time it releases, and it's like, wow, this sure is like a cheery, happy game, and oh no, it really gets you in an unexpected way. And both Klonoa games, 1 and 2, are like that. But like I said earlier, Namco never really seemed like super happy with Klonoa's success. Like all future Klonoa games after the first one kind of aged him up a little bit. They made him a little more mature, not necessarily edgier, but just, a little more adult. Instead of an all ages character, they kind of made him into something that like 14-year-old boys would think was cool. And that kind of always rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Not to the point where like I was, I'd swear off the Klonoa franchise or anything like that. But it's just one of those things where you look at and you kind of frown a little bit like, ugh, like you didn't need to do that. In the Wii version, the Wii remake of Klonoa 1, kind of gestures towards that kind of stuff, but thankfully doesn't go too far. In most ways, it's actually like really faithful to the original PlayStation version, like almost slavishly so in some places. It keeps like all the original level designs. It keeps all the original bosses. Like it is a remake, like a real legitimate remake where, it's the same story for the most part. I feel like they changed some of it. Same level layouts, even the same music, right? Which is probably like something that really seems surprising to me. Because obviously when they remastered this, they improved the visuals across the board. This was a 2.5D PlayStation game where all the characters and the enemies and everything were like sprites, 2D sprites, running around like 3D backgrounds. And the Wii version remakes everything to be like full 3D. You're not running around like 3D environments, but all the characters are 3D, all the enemies are 3D. It's actually like a very nice looking game, even when you scale it up to HD, because I was emulating this in Dolphin, the GameCube and Wii emulator. Even when you scale this game up to HD, it still looks really, really good. But it's one of those things where like they improved everything else about this. They improved all the graphics. They did things to the storyline. I'm not going to say they improved it, but they definitely did add more dialogue. But they didn't touch the music. And it's like, if you're going to remaster everything else, you would think they would, at the very least, remaster the music so that it sounded cleaner. Like Klonoa's music is kind of has like this almost MIDI sound to it sometimes. That's not really a complaint, like it's good MIDI music, but you'd think like, maybe they'd get like a live orchestra or something like that, but they just reuse the original songs from the PlayStation version, which sound just fine. It's a good soundtrack, I'm not necessarily complaining that they didn't touch the soundtrack. It's just weird that they made the choice to reuse all the songs verbatim, let's say. But yeah, it's a nice, good, short little game. If you've never played Klonoa, I definitely suggest you seek it out, either on the PlayStation. The PlayStation version actually holds up just fine nowadays, but the Wii version isn't bad either. And the Wii version, if you're a stickler, there is English voice acting in the Wii version. Normally, Klonoa has this thing called Phantomile language. The whole game, if you didn't know, is it's got, again, kind of like Kirby, it's like all this, it's like a dream world. So normally in Klonoa 1 for the PlayStation and Klonoa 2 on the PlayStation 2, all the characters speak like this fake made-up gibberish language called Phantomile. And it actually gives the game a lot of personality. And for whatever reason, for the Wii version, they went back and I don't want to say they removed the Phantomile language because it's still in there, you just have to dig for it. But the default option is full English localization, voice acting. It's actual people speaking English as opposed to a fake made-up dream language with subtitles. And like I said, the original Phantomile language option is still there. If you go digging through the options, you can put it back to the original made-up language track, which I usually do because I think it gives the game, more personality and more flavor. But if you like anime voice acting, that option is available to you in the Wii version, let's say. It's one of those things where tomorrow Namco could announce that the Wii version of Klonoa was coming to the PS4 and the Xbox One, and I think I'd be okay with that. It looks good enough, it sounds good enough, it plays good enough, and frankly, Klonoa needs it. Klonoa has been kind of left by the wayside for a little while here, and it feels like, the Wii version was an attempt to maybe revive the franchise a little bit, and it didn't really catch on. Like I said earlier, Klonoa's kind of been a franchise that has struggled a little bit in a way that has been various levels of depressing over the years. Because it's a good... I like Klonoa 1 and 2. Well, I say that. I like Klonoa 1. I haven't played Klonoa 2 since I made that video review in 2009. So, it has been a very long time since I've played Klonoa 2. I was actually thinking about that while I played the Wii version, that I've played like Klonoa 1 to completion like 6 or 7 times at this point, and I've only ever played Klonoa 2 to completion once. And part of that is like the difficulty nowadays, hooking up the PlayStation 2 to like a system where it looks and plays correctly. It's one of those games that, last I checked, doesn't really emulate properly in the PlayStation 2 emulator, PCSX2. And, at this point, hooking up my PlayStation 2 is going to mean looking through a lot of boxes that are still packed here in my closet. So, I don't necessarily know, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to dig up my physical copy of Klonoa 2 anytime soon. Who knows? Maybe that would be like a good thing to stream, right? I said I wanted to stream a whole game to completion on Twitch, and Klonoa 2 is definitely a much longer game than Klonoa 1. It could be something to think about. I've played a lot more of Grip. I mentioned this, I think, last podcast. It's that spiritual successor game to Roll Cage. It finally came out of early access about a week and a half ago, and I've played quite a bit of it. It has a fairly sizable single-player campaign now, but I'd still say, like, as positive as I was about it last month, the game definitely still has a lot of problems, and I've rage quit from it, let's say, 2 or 3 times at this point, because every now and then you just hit, like, the perfect storm of frustrating, annoying things that aren't necessarily in your control, and it just kind of... it can feel like a really mean game. even though I said I wasn't going to do any work, I did end up publishing a review for Grip on my personal video game criticism website, bltn.net. What actually happened there was that, I was planning on just writing like a Steam product review for the game, and usually those tend to be pretty short for me. We'll say like 2 or 3 paragraphs maximum is usually about the limit I go for a Steam review. Because usually, like, it doesn't really feel like a space where you can publish full-size, full-length reviews. And as it turned out, by the time I was done writing my Grip review on the Steam website, it was almost the length of a full-size, full-length review that I would publish on, like, tsscnews.com. So what I ended up doing is I took that, base, that probably, like, 1,000 words I'd written about Grip, and I polished it up just a little bit more, and I ended up publishing it on my personal video game criticism website, bltn.net. Better late than never video games. Check it out. So, I'm not really going to talk too much more about Grip here. If you just want to go read my review, I've just said the URL out loud twice now, so you can just go visit bltn.net to read more. It's a weird game. It's a game that I both love and I think I kind of hate at the same time. And depending on when you ask me, I either love it more than I hate it, or I hate it more than I love it. But you can go check that out if you want. And then finally, we'll check in on the Final Fantasy VI report. That's coming to an end here, actually. I'm just about done with the game. I just entered the final dungeon, where you split your party up into 3 teams of 4 people. I kind of glossed over it last podcast because I think I'm a little bit more excited to get this game over with, and I'm kind of getting bored with it. That's not to say it's a bad game, but I haven't really connected with people in the cast. The story has kind of felt a little just disjointed at times. And like some of that's to blame on like the disjointed way that I've been playing it. I only play it during like commutes and bathroom breaks. So like if you remember, I started playing this game all the way back in like February, and it is currently November. So I've been playing this game for like 9 or 10 months now. It's definitely been a slow process, and there can be months between plot points that they expect you to remember, and I don't remember them at all. But at the same time, I kind of think like, well, when I played through Final Fantasy V a couple years ago, and when I played through Final Fantasy IV like 4 or 5 years ago, I played those games in a lot of the same conditions I'm playing Final Fantasy VI, and I'm not really getting that feeling with them. Like, I understood what was going on in Final Fantasy IV. I understood what was going on in Final Fantasy V. I finished Final Fantasy IV. I quit playing Final Fantasy V because it was kind of boring to me. Again, I didn't really like the characters. I didn't like the job system very much. I know that's blasphemy, but it felt like such a super generic fantasy trope storyline of, the dragons and gotta protect the crystals, and these people are from, what was it? Was Galuf from space? Gosh, I don't remember. It's been a couple years since I quit Final Fantasy V for being so boring. But it didn't hook me. It hooked me even less than Final Fantasy VI, but I knew what was going on in the storyline at the time. I remember the tree, I remember the meteor, merging of the worlds was, I think, the last thing I did in Final Fantasy V. And at the time, I kind of blamed that on the playing the fan translation instead of the Game Boy Advance version, which apparently people like the Game Boy Advance version a whole lot. So maybe I just didn't play the right version of Final Fantasy V. But my point is, the feelings I have about Final Fantasy VI's storyline being kind of disjointed and maybe a little bit random feeling and a little bit hard to follow, I didn't have with Final Fantasy IV or V. So it just leaves Final Fantasy VI feeling kind of like a mess. A lot of its ideas just didn't gel together super well. Found myself wondering a lot, like, why things were happening sometimes. I was just talking about a scene with someone else recently, like just a few days ago. I mentioned this scene on the podcast when it came up, but There's that scene with Bannon, right, where he's the leader of the rebels. He's kind of pleading with Terra. Terra is special in a way. She's imbued with like these magical powers, right? And Bannon is the leader of the rebellion who is against the Empire, and the Empire wants to use the magic to rule the world or something like that. And Bannon is pleading with Terra, please help us, please help us. You're our key to winning this war, right? But what he doesn't explain, like, that's actually, like, me explaining what he's saying is more clear than the way it comes through in the game, right? He doesn't really explain why he needs Terra. He doesn't explain what he's going to use Terra for. I think he asks Terra to come with them, but I don't think he necessarily says where exactly they're going or why they're going there. I think maybe he says, once that they're going back to Narsh. And Narsh is where the game begins. And it's one of those things that, this is where, like, I kind of forgot what was at Narsh because of, how long it had been between gameplay sessions. In game time, it had probably been about 4 hours since you started in Narsh. And for me, it had probably been more than a month since I'd visited Narsh. So it was one of those things where I didn't really remember what was at Narsh or why it was important to go back to Narsh. And the person I was talking to, about all this was defending the game, obviously, because, Final Fantasy VI hinges on this War of the Magi event, and it's shown that Terra can use magic and is therefore, like, considered to be very special in the context of the game. She's supposed to be, like, the first person anyone has seen using magic in, like, 100 years or something ridiculous like that. Because magic has been outlawed after the War of the Magi nearly, destroyed the world or something. I don't remember. So, of course, Bannon wants her help because she's a magic user. And when you really think about it in the context of Final Fantasy VI's gameplay, it's like, okay, sure, Terra can use magic. But when you use Terra's magic, especially at the beginning of the game, she kind of starts out with, like, the most basic spells in the game. She starts out with, like, the beginner fire spell, the beginner thunder spell, and the beginner blizzard spell, which are, like, actually super weak at this point in the game. They don't really do much damage to enemies unless you catch someone with, like, an elemental weakness. And even then, that requires, like, spending a lot of MP on experimentation. So they're just, like, these really basic, really weak magic spells. And what ends up happening, or at least what happened with me, is that I never used Terra's magic. I used it once, right? Because when you first get Terra in your party, you want to see what she's up to. Everyone in Final Fantasy VI kind of has, like, a unique ability, right? Edgar can use his crossbow. Locke, I always say Locke, sorry, it's an old habit. Locke can steal from enemies. Sabin has melee strikes. He can, like, suplex people and do flurry punches. Things like that. Everyone has their own unique gimmick. And Terra's gimmick is her magic. Well, it's one of her gimmicks. So obviously, you test out her magic, and in the battle you test her magic out on, it actually triggers a little cutscene where Edgar and Locke sort of freak out. They're like, whoa, Terra can use magic. That's amazing. And, I used her magic, and it did, like, a third of the damage her sword would do. So it was tremendously weak, and I never touched her magic ever again after that point. So to have this scene with Bannon in the rebel base, where he's like, Terra, you have to help us. You're the key to us winning this war, because you can cast magic. It's like, what are you talking about? Terra's magic sucks. It's one of those things where, like, I think the war would have been won by everyone using their swords, right? Because everyone else, if Terra only used her magic, everyone else would be protecting her at that point, because she would be the weak link in the party. And the same thing goes later on when you get Celeste. Celeste is your second magic user. And again, her magic sucks. In fact, in general, even all the way up until almost the end of the game, magic sucks in this game. It's not good. It's not powerful. You're better off just hitting things with your sword. And in the context of a Final Fantasy game, this is kind of weird. Because when you think back to Final Fantasy IV, for example, you get Terra, the old man. He's this wizard. He is a powerful wizard. He knows like super powerful magical attacks. I think when he gets into your party, Terra knows like almost every spell in the game. So you can just lean on him to use the most powerful spells he's got, and he'll mop the floor with people with magic. And that's really, really good. And the same goes for Rydia, the summoner girl with the green hair. She is kind of a mage character. As a summoner, not only can she summon espers or whatever they're called in Final Fantasy IV, I don't remember, maybe eidolons. I know that's an interchangeable term they use for summons. But she can summon, monsters, but she can also use magic, and, the summons are powerful and the magic is powerful because that's her gimmick. That's her job. She's kind of a mage, and Terra is sort of a mage. Final Fantasy VI doesn't have mages. They have people that can use magic, and universally speaking, people that can use magic in Final Fantasy VI are weak. They are just straight up weak. But they can still use swords like everyone else, and they do fine. You just never can touch their magic. So it's this weird disconnect where the plot is telling you that Terra is supposed to be like super powerful, she's super important, she's going to help them win the war, but her magic sucks. The thing that makes her special is terrible. And then eventually you reach a point in the game where everyone can learn magic. It's not just Terra and Celeste. Locke can use magic, Sabin can use magic, everyone can use magic, and Terra 100% stops being special. And at that point, it's just like, what is the point of her existing? What is the point of Celeste existing? Both Celeste and Terra have like these alternate abilities. Because obviously, like, you get them and it's like their magic is the thing that makes them special at the start. But obviously, when everyone else can use magic, they need new gimmicks. And for Celeste, she has like this ability called Runic, and I've never really been clear what Celeste's runic ability does. I think it makes her like the target of enemy attacks more often or something like that, which, maybe that's like a high level skill that I'm not aware of, but it doesn't really seem very useful to make her draw all the fire in the game. And then Terra gets this thing, what's it called? Is it like Awakening or something? It's like she turns into this wispy like ghost girl, and it supposedly amplifies the power of all of her magic, but it only like works for like a couple minutes at a time, and once you use it once, you have to wait for it to charge back up again. So it's not really actually that useful. It doesn't really mean that you're going to be leaning on her magic more. It's easier to make Terra be the one, among one of many people in this game that hits things with swords versus like Final Fantasy IV. When you first get adult Rydia in your party, like her magic will carry the entire party. I think that's like the whole point when you first get Rydia in Final Fantasy IV. I think everyone is like fainted or KO'd or something, and she comes in and saves them, and she carries the entire battle. So, she feels powerful. Her magic feels powerful. And that's not what happens in Final Fantasy VI. Terra never really gets a moment to justify her powers. So everyone telling her that she's powerful just feels weird. And the game is full of like dumb little moments like that just rubbed me the wrong way. I mentioned before, like the opera house scene with Celeste. It happens that Celeste looks like an old opera singer that is either dead or missing, or she quit or something. So they're like, Celeste, dress up as the opera lady so that we can do this thing for the opera manager. And Celeste is like, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds like a horrible idea. And then like her very next line of dialogue, she's like, I'm in, I'll do it. Like she turns on a dime 180 degrees in the span of like a quarter of a second. And it feels like super weird in the context of that scene. So, I'm just glad that I'll be done and over with. I won't have to worry about this game anymore. I can say that I finally played Final Fantasy VI. I finally finished Final Fantasy VI. It only took me most of the year. And then I can stop feeling bad that I haven't played this all-time classic RPG that people seem to love, even though I definitely have not loved this game. It has a few good moments every now and then that, get a smile out of me or whatever. Particularly the scene where Realm meets... Oh, what's his name? The octopus. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. I keep wanting to say Umaro, but that's not who... Umaro is the Yeti guy? Gosh. There are too many of these things. Whatever, the octopus guy. Realm meets the octopus guy. And there's a lot of, cute dialogue in there where she's, calling him pet names and he's getting flustered. And that's fun, that's funny, that's cute. I'd like that. But the game isn't full of scenes like that. The game is just a weird mess. But, once I get Final Fantasy VI out of the way, I can think about other RPGs. I've been thinking about Mother 3. I mentioned, I think earlier, I was thinking about Undertale. I've owned Undertale since the year it came out. It was gifted to me by a generous person that I think follows me on Twitter. He seemed very adamant that I played it, and that was 4 years ago. And it's been installed on my PC ever since he bought it for me. And I always said, I'm going to play Undertale, and then I never play Undertale. And I should probably play Undertale, especially because, I've been dodging spoilers this entire time, or I've been trying to. It's one of those things where, you'll see fan art of something, and you'll think, is that a spoiler? I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. And it's out of context, so I don't really understand what it's referencing, so it's probably a spoiler, but I don't know. So maybe I've been spoiled on Undertale, maybe I haven't. I should probably play it, and then I should probably play Deltarune, because that just came out, and a lot of people seem to be talking about it. That's why Undertale has been on my mind. There's other RPGs I've been interested in playing as well. I have this weird itch to try Breath of Fire, specifically Breath of Fire 2, I think. I'm not necessarily interested in the first Breath of Fire, but I have this weird nostalgia for Breath of Fire 2, because I remember a friend of mine owning that game, and I played a little bit of it every now and then, and I have lots of nostalgia for, the music. So it's one of those RPGs where, not a lot of people say you need to play it anymore. It's probably actually considered a pretty terrible game by today's standards, but it's also one of those things where I have curiosity that needs to be quenched. I have nostalgia for a series I've never played much more than, say, an hour or two of. So, I don't know. We'll see. RPGs. That'll probably be my 2019 project. I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe I'll stream Undertale. Who knows? That's for another podcast, because we're done here. This is the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can obviously go to patreon.com/BlazeHedgehog to learn more about hearing up-to-date versions of this podcast, because you're listening to the old one. If you are supporting me on Patreon, thank you very much. I appreciate your patronage so much, especially now during the holidays. Oh my gosh. I have been panicking so much about money problems these last couple months coming into the holidays here. Because I was trying to save up for a Nintendo Switch, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do it. The logistics of it all, having to buy gifts for everyone else, it's a mess, it's a nightmare, and I'm really dragging my feet on trying to figure it all out. I don't want to deal with it. This is such a stressful time of the year for me. I feel like during the holidays here the most is when I'm missing being in Colorado. I hear friends in Colorado talking about it snowing, and it almost never snows here in Nevada. It snows in March a little bit, or at least that's what it did last year, or I guess technically this year. So, we've been getting down to the 20s at night, and then it gets into the 70s during the day. And there's not very many trees that turn colors for fall. It's not snowing. It's not even raining. It's a real depressing time of the year for me. So thank you all for supporting me if you do. And if you don't, then think about supporting me. I don't know. That's such a weird thing for me to say. But whatever. I'll see you guys in December. Maybe in a week and a half, depending on when I record this podcast. See you then.